Ayin Beis, Volume 1, Chapter 52, Page Tzadik Aleph. In the middle of the 13th Discourse, which is Va'at Yisrael, Parsha Ekev, 2012, but it was said Parsha Ekev 1912, so we're talking 100 years ago. We're reliving the past century through the eyes of a great mystic and visionary, the Rebbe Rashab, who hammered away week after week writing. So the least we can do is try to travel along with him and honor him with trying to understand a bit the ideas that he felt important to convey. So we're in the middle of a discussion. We can call it the subject matter. The title of the subject is Faculties and Desire, or Belashon Belaz, Belashon, the language of Chassidus of these Mamorim, Koiches HaNefesh and Ratzon HaNefesh. So the nefesh is the spirit, the soul, and it expresses itself through desire. That's a reflection of the soul, general soul, and then it has particular instruments, which we call faculties or attributes, each one in this particular way. So in the last three chapters, 49, 50, 51, he's been discussing this in all different angles, back and forth, really dissecting how we function. But now we're not just discussing any longer just the immanent faculties, which means the keiches pnimim. We're also discussing this transcendental faculties, or faculties, specifically ratzon. There's another one, tainug, which will be discussed later. So in the structure of things, if you want to know exactly where it is, there's the 10 spheres are the 10 faculties. Keser is ratzon, is arich, and oinug or tainug is atik. Right now we're speaking about arich of keser. Later that will be spelled out, but for all practical purposes, this is makiv. If you want in different terms, nefesh, ruach, neshama is nefesh is nehi, netzach yisoid, ruach is midas, chesed gvura teferes, chabad is chachma bina das, and then comes chaya, which is a makiv, that's ratzon, and yechida, which is an even higher makiv, that's tainug. But practically speaking, we're speaking the difference between desire and faculties. And the distinctions he made in each of the chapters, I believe he's made 3 or 4 distinctions, and I'll just sum it up. In chapter 49, I'll probably put up online a chart so we could have a good, a comparison of between the two columns. So here are the 2 columns. There's ratzon and keiches, or your desire and faculties. Column 1, we talk about in chapter 49, the main points were made that ratzon is everywhere equal. It doesn't have a particular place and distinction between one level and the next. Whereas keiches, as we discussed at length, in Maila Mata, there's gradations, there's levels, each one more energy, less energy. Ratzon is an equalizer. Number 2, ratzon is not a metzias davar. It does not have substance. In other words, it means it doesn't have a distinct identity. Seichel has an identity. It's intelligence. Midah is an identity called emotions. Each midah has its particular identity, personality, if you wish. Another word for it is ratzon is ayin. The third thing is that ratzon is gili hanefesh. Its role is expression of the soul. That's all that matters. So similar to the color of an object, the color conveys the color of the object. That's its function. Its function is not its function itself. In other words, let's say a cup. Its function is to drink or to pour water from it. There's the shape and color. So ratzon is basically an agent of the soul's. There's galus hanefesh, netiyas hanefesh, so on. The koiches, on the other hand, are mitzuyarim. Each koich faculty, as I said, has an identity. Therefore, it also has a function. Its function is to analyze an idea, to express a feeling. And as a result of this comes the 4th thing in chapter 49, which is that desire leaves nothing. Once desire is gone, there's nothing of substance because it doesn't have substance. All it is like the light of the reflection of an item, of a luminary. The faculties, even though they're also an expression of the soul, but they're substance. So intelligence leaves intelligence. An idea has been now formulated. This idea is somewhere in your memory banks. This idea has been now communicated to someone else. It's on paper, which means it's forever. Chapter 50, he moves on and says that Ratzon is not in Kalim. Ratzon is not manifest in containers. It's similar to what I said a little earlier, that it's everywhere, equal. But here is the focus on containers. Meaning that it does not be slapshus. It doesn't manifest in a relationship. Ratzon does not have a relationship. The desire doesn't have a relationship with the things it desires. Because again, it's not focusing on the thing, all it is the soul's desire. Whatever the soul says, basically. Seichel, midas, have a relationship with their containers. If the container is more refined, the intelligence will flow better. It gets involved with its container. As a result of this, in the faculties, things take time. You want to train yourself, technique. The intelligence trains the body in a certain particular way to do things, whether it's being an artist and so on. That takes time. Because it's, how do you say it? B'derech hisaskus, b'derech hislapshus. I want to say it gets involved. It's involved in the process. It's not detached. With desire, it's detached. It wants to desire, desires, and that's it. And as I said, no substance. Whereas desire, the things do not take time. As soon as you desire to move your finger, it moves your finger. You don't have to train your finger, because desire. If you want the finger should move in a particular skilled way, that requires a whole preparation. That's why you see, you don't just start, you want to create the finger should do something that's not just a natural movement. And then finally in chapter 50, another element that takes time is the faculties develop, mature, and grow over time. Like it says, Reiv Yomim, or not Reiv Yomim, Yom Yudaberu, V'reiv Shanim Yodiu Chachma. I said Yaviu Chachma, Yabiu Chachma, it says Yodiu Chachma. It's from Iyuv. So time has its impact. When it comes to desire may be more subdued as we get older, but it doesn't go through growth and process. It doesn't go through a development and a maturity. And then finally in chapter 51, the last chapter, we learned another 3 elements in Ratzon. One is that it's b'derech shlita. I'm sorry. The first thing is that Ratzon atzmusei meir. Its essence, it's not a reflection. What you see is what you get. It comes out with its full intensity. Desire something, that's what, right now, that dominates. Whereas an intelligence, so this is a reflection. Meaning that when the intelligence communicates, let's say, to the other part of the faculties, you're not getting that suddenly the other part of the body becomes a brain or mind. The mind is communicating and is giving training or directing something with intelligence. And the Ratzon gives the whole thing. The whole thing occupies. The whole essence of the Ratzon desire dominates. And therefore, Ratzon dominates. B'derech shlita, mamshala. It orders, it commands. It doesn't reckon. Remember, we said it's not a relationship. It tells you this is what I desire and that's it. Whereas the faculties are b'derech hislapshus, meaning they communicate, they educate, they teach. That's why it takes time, as you said earlier. But here the focus is on that it's in a form of kiruv. It's close. They communicate with each other. Seichel trains the midas. The midas respond to the emotions, respond to the intelligence. There are different ways you spoke about it, whether it's through actually training them in the sense where they convincing them, persuading them, or it's the bittul that it brings into them, or it's just a psichel be'etzem, someone who's fundamentally intelligent, fundamental bar sichli, so the midas themselves are elevated on that level. But there's a relationship. There is some type of dialogue going on, one way or another. Whereas Ratzon, like he says, the example is like Mesiras Nefesh. Avram Avinu, when he controlled, when he withheld, repressed his emotions, his natural love to his son, that is coercion. He has to literally stop it from working. And then finally, Ratzon has the power to conceal faculties completely. The faculties only have the power to conceal partially, but not completely slow down or stop the faculties from functioning, like we just said about Avram Avinu. And he gave the example of mania, a certain illness, which affects the rots and desire, not affect that the desire is not there, even though everything else is functioning. So, though the movement of the body comes through because it has energy within it, but the driving force that pushes it is a desire. You have desire, you have the movement. If you don't have desire, you don't have that movement that follows. Now, just to elaborate a moment again about the emotions and intellect. In Tanya, when you learn about the battle between the emotions and intellect, in chapter 9, he says that the nefesh habamis rests in the leiv, the heart, the left side of the heart, the blood. And basically, in other words, it functions through impulse. The nefesh halakis rests in the mind, and it functions through reflection. So the mind reflects on something. The heart does not. Emotions see something, I want it. If you didn't have a mind to temper, to tame, to control, we would just be wild animals, following our natural emotional instincts. In a way, a child is that way until they're trained and their mind starts working. So when you learn Tanya, you could say, that it is a type of dominance, moyach shalit alalav, like he brings. And it's critical to state here that without the rotzen, the shalit is not, as he says here, shalit, there's two types of shalit, shlita. Moyach shalit alalav is not the shlita of a king and a ruler dominating. Moyach shalit alalav means the moyach is more powerful than the mind. The mind is more powerful than the emotions. So let's say somebody calls you up, a telemarketer, and manipulates your emotions and say, you must buy this thing. And you say, well, let me think about it. They say, no, the deal is over in for half an hour. Which is, of course, putting pressure that you should, you not to think about it. Most mistakes happen because we don't reflect. And then your emotions get the best of you, I'm going to miss out this deal, then you end up having a shmata. Which is usually the case, if not worse. Like they say, a man with money meets a man with experience. The man with experience ends up with the money, and the man with the money ends up with the experience. If this happens more than once, maybe you should be in a different business. Because we know our emotions get the best of us, and we know when it comes to hardcore negotiation in business, especially with all the emotions involved, you have to be very much in check. So the mind has the power to reflect, and the heart is wise enough to say, listen, tell me what you think. It's like someone's offering you a great deal. What do? You consult with someone that's an expert before you do it. The problem is our emotions get the best of us. So in Tanya he says, in chapter 13 later he says, Zev Zeh Shelton. So you have these two voices. It says Shelet, also the word Shelton. And he uses the word Shelton specifically because they both they're both authorities. And then it says that the Eibishter stands the Yamine of the person. So it's like two judges against one. And that's how you win. So the obvious question is, if that's the case, why don't we always win? It's 2 against 1. The answer is because like a communist court. The prosecution speaks and the defense never is allowed to speak. So the nefesh habamis has its emotions. It tells you what it wants. If you stopped and said, you know what? Okay, we heard now equal time. Equal time, let's hear now what the mind has to say. 90% of the mistakes, I would say, even maybe more, would not happen if we did that. But our mistakes don't happen. Our mistakes are moments of, we call moments of passion. Instant gratification. And then later you say, why did I do that? And even while you're doing it, you almost can realize it's not always great. But that's what emotions are. Emotions get the better of us, and then we don't think straight. We get biased. But in a healthy situation, and we all know this also happens, if you really, it's a situation where you know it's life and death or something like that, you're not going to just jump. Someone's ready to send you, says, hey, I need $1 million or something. You're not just jumping emotionally in most cases. You're going to reflect, you're going to consult, you're going to deliberate, which means you're using the mind to help look, is this the right thing? Same thing as in relationships. You meet someone, it can be beautiful on the outside and say, hey, I love this person. We all know what do you mean love. You don't even know the person. You start talking to them, you start dating them, and you start realizing, is this for me, not for me? Basically, it's the perfect interaction between heart and mind. A good balance, you don't let the mind get stuck in mind games, because then you can end up not making a decision the rest of your life, because I'm not positive. But what's called informed emotions. Your emotions are being guided. So there's a communication, there's a relationship going on here. The emotions tell you what they think, so to speak, what they feel. The mind reflects. It goes back, as we learned earlier. The mind doesn't tell you it's good for you or not. The mind can say, based on what I see, here's what I see. Observation. And then now, the emotions at least have now a so-called guide. So what's going on here is a dialogue in a healthy way. Now when he says, for example, when emotions are bisgabrus, they're overwhelming, then there's no dialogue, exactly right. That's the best proof that the mind does not have real power over them. Push comes to shove, the emotions go crazy, the authority of the mind is suddenly not there. If it's a normal, decent relationship, so emotions have what to say, the mind then has what it has to say, and they speak, and as he says there, if it's something that's not God's will, the mind will say that. It's not, may feel good, but it's not going to be good for you. And then God sides with that side, so you have two against one. But if the emotions, when it comes to Ratzon, the emotions can be bisgabrus. Ratzon has the power to basically shut them down, period. I'm not interested in what you have to say. Now, sometimes you'll have a situation where Ratzon, desire, speaks to Seichel, and the Seichel is also convincing the Midas. But it's not the Seichel that's doing it, it's the pure abstinence. In this case, Avraham Avinu was dedicated to God's will, and make no difference what Seichel would say, or emotions would say. As a matter of fact, there, Seichel would probably go with emotions. What are you doing exactly? Doesn't make sense. Or Seichel could say, like you said, there were two ways that Mesiras Nefesh works. Either you put all the faculties aside, and nothing matters, because this is what God wants. He doesn't feel himself. Or the opposite. Mesiras Nefesh makes his galish to say that for God everything is worthwhile. However it works. It's interesting two ways Mesiras Nefesh is. The point being, however, there is something going on, a dialogue. Now one could wonder, well, if that's the case, why don't we just use our Ratzon every time we have a Yetzer Hara? That's nice. You could, technically you could. That's why you're responsible. That's what he said. That's why we're responsible even when we're asleep. Because even when it's reflexive, there's still, you have control to some extent. But the problem is we don't exercise that power, not because we don't have it. We don't exercise it, like the Chassidus story. Ken and Kensten, Vil and Vilstenish. The story with the guys with the Chassidim, they were learning, and the guy came and his wagon got stuck in the mud. He called into the room, he says, "Can anyone help me here?" And they said, "No." So he said in Russian, what's the Russian expression? I don't remember the Russian. He says, right, exactly. You don't say you can't. You don't want. So they learn from that a lesson of Avodas Hashem. That's it. So the question is, so the Ratzon Primi there is. Anyway, the point being, however, that sums up what we've learned so far. So it's like a whole chart, as I said, of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, something like 10, 11, 12 differences. All obviously rooted in the same issue. But it's actually breaking it down, as we know, as the Metler Rebbe says in Shai Yichud, when you break things down, you can work with them. You just say, be a good person, be a bad person, take on achlotas. You want to know exactly where. Are you dealing with chesed, with gvura, with teferes? You're dealing with desire. You see a student that's not excelling. You're talking about applying this. A student not excelling. Where is it? Is the desire missing? Is the faculty not developed? Is the faculty weak? Maybe it needs training. And it's not just one problem. It's not one size fits all. You have to really, case by case, analyze the situation. So besides the purpose of all this discussion really is understanding how we connect with God and God's desire to have a world. And at the same time, it's connected to the structure of existence, which is the immanent. It's basically the unity between the transcendent and the immanent. But on a personal level, there are many applications here in our own life. How connected are we with what are our desires like? What are our faculties like?
But isn't that a direct result of our upbringing, of our surroundings, of our environment?
Absolutely. Look. Let's put it this way: a newborn child is like a fresh fallen snow. You see it in the morning; it's clean. Then life begins to trample. We are no longer the pure product the way God shaped us. Even on a physical level, you don't use your lungs fully. We're full of toxins. It's also spiritually and psychologically. So there's no question. There's a lot of things, but remember the key thing, and that's a big distinction between the so-called Torah therapy and secular therapy. We believe fundamentally in the resilience and the absolute power of the neshama. Basically, Afa Pisha Chati Yisrael. No matter what happens, you have deeper resources. And God would not give you a challenge you can't overcome. So obviously it's a lot easier you have a healthy home and give all the healthy tools. So chanech nara pidarke, from young age you train some. I don't know if that's where you're going, but I'm just saying. But bottom line is, no matter where you are in your life,
maybe his desire was weakened because his neshama is so tainted by his.
No, let's put it this way: if you don't have self-confidence, you don't let your like, for example, Avraham Avinu needed a lot of courage and self-confidence to let that desire speak to him.
That's on one level, but even spiritually.
But there's no such thing. The question is, are you talking about someone's damaged goods and their desire no longer can function properly?
His desire towards spiritual, towards divine, is
not
as strong as if it would be pure.
Well, let's put it this way: by virtue of his pure neshama shenasat to be tahirihi, nothing was changed. You're talking about the channels of how you access it. Look, listen, a criminal in prison also has a pure neshama. The problem is he's not acted on it. Think of it like a pilot flame that's not been fanned. Think of it of a brilliant genius musician who's never played music or stopped. Like the Alter Rebbe told that chassid. What did he say to him? He said, "I could learn." So he says, "What do you mean? A ganav is not someone who could be a ganav. Someone is a ganav. Someone is a lamdan is not someone who could learn. It's someone that does learn." My point is, you're correct in actualization, and that's a key thing. You can have a healthy heart, and God forbid if your arteries are blocked, that's very dangerous. My point I'm trying to say is you have to recognize two things.
That even it doesn't weaken the neshama, weakens the channels.
Yeah. It all depends which level. Nefesh, even nefesh kisachta tvo, So the bottom line is nefesh, yeah. Ruach may be a little less. Neshama, as you get deeper, it's like a burn. It burns an hour later. That doesn't mean that a person cannot function without those. Look, the whole concept of tshuva means that even the worst thing you can do tshuva on. What does that mean? Not that echtev asher, not that you can initially go ahead, but it means you can dig deeper and reach a place in the Bal Harotzen, like Chassidus says. And it's another discussion. My point is, yes, these models can apply to anybody. I'm not saying it's not. Of course, it's easier when you have all the proper. But it's a bigger discussion. You're talking now really application. See, the ideas here are very clear. It's a formula. Now, applying that formula to people, obviously, you have to really assess the person and their situation. Look, a person growing up in an abusive, very unhealthy home, that needs to be talked about. But it's critical to know that Eser Keiches HaNefesh and the Ratzon, all these things are forces of the soul. Nobody really can destroy them. That doesn't mean a life can't be destroyed, but every life that could be destroyed could also be repaired and healed. That's a critical thing. It's not what he discusses. Actually, later in Chelik Gimel, he talks a lot about healing. So, but right now he's really talking almost like Adam Yasher, Elikim also Adam Yasher. Talking how it should be. Once you know that, then your question is, where am I? So obviously, but I think there are lessons from this to anybody. There's no question in my mind. I mean, I do this all the time. I teach these ideas. Like even this simple thing, like let's talk about a child in school where you see a lack of motivation. What's going on? What is it exactly? It's not, as I said, one solution. There's different solutions, different things. And it's true, if a child at home, stuttering, they say, is a big result of lack of confidence and sensitivity. Very sensitive people, because it's like really fear. And that's why you see children can sing. Alone, they don't stutter. There are many, I've done a lot of studying on it because I had to deal with people and I wanted to understand it better. It's very interesting. It teaches a lot about human beings. I had this King's Speech recently, a movie that was like a big hit. They talked a lot about this topic. And you could teach, and there's a lot to do with Ratzon, much more than, it's not that they have, I'm not talking about a person who has a lisp or a person who has a speech defect. It's another story. So you're talking about a person who psychologically doesn't say words. Often, it's a dominating parent. So I'm just giving examples where but you could apply it, and then you look at the situation and say, okay, let's figure this out. But it's I think fascinating models for sure. So let's go on to chapter 52. Nun Beis, the bottom of Tzadik Aleph. Ukol zeh mipnei she'atzmas harotzon nimshech lifol b'chol ever u'b'chol keach. And all these distinctions and discussion about desire and faculties, and all the powers that we speak about Ratzon. The last one being that it comes not in a form of shlita, because it's an overpowering force. Now that I think about it, Now that I think about it, I want to add one more thing before I continue. In Aveda, or human psychology, it's actually beautiful in the structure of things that God created these two forces. We have two forces here. In other words, the Rebbe has a sikh, a beautiful sikh in Sheftim Nun Aleph. Actually, this week's Haftarah. That the judges will return as they were initially, and Shaftayich, Yitzayich, and the advisors as they were originally, or initially, however. The Rebbe compares it to Hasei l'charav, Knei l'cha chaver. Appoint for yourself a teacher, and acquire a friend. Why do you need both? So he explains, because the teacher, Rav, like Shefet, that's a judge, that's an authority. That's a person who can give you a psak that's above you, has more wisdom, has more authority than you. I want to know, is this right or wrong? You want a ruling almost. You don't want advice. But then that does not really touch you impersonally. That's more like, okay, I listen to what the Torah says. Sometimes that is needed. But there's another thing. You need it to be pnimiyazdik. Pnimiyazdik is not asay. Asay is forcing yourself. The Rebbe says asay means lashon kfiyah. Knei l'cha chaver is already acquiring. It's like buying something that you want to buy. And that is a friend. A friend is a yayitz, an advisor, not a shefet. He understands your situation. It's a discussion. He communicates. He can explain it to you. He can help you work through. He holds your hand. It's very much the difference between Ratzon and Meichen. And you need both in really running your life. Because at times you need Ratzon. You must have that, or else you won't have a definitive ruling. You'll just have an ongoing conversation that's not going to go anywhere. You need a decision that has to be made. Like I said, someone's dating somebody. Okay, the midas idea, the meichen is there. You could argue about it all day. You're not sure. There comes a point where you need to come to a door where Ratzon has to say, okay, enough is enough. What do you want to do? And this is what we're going to do. Seichel could say, I can't tell you 100% sure this is the person for you. I can tell you, based on my research, based on what I see, it looks good. So we go to the Rebbe for the final bracha, so to speak, to give us that type of certainty, from the Rav. But a chaver is necessary. But if a person bases decisions in life purely because someone says, Leibel Goren tells the story when he was dating. So middle of dating, he was not finished dating, and he was going to ask the Rebbe a bracha. Middle of dating, he asked the Rebbe whether he should continue. So the Rebbe did like this. He pointed here and said, on these matters, of the heart that is, not your father can help you, not your mother can help you, not I can help you. What does that mean? That God created us, you have to have feelings. If you want to continue, you need to know whether you want to continue. Once you feel, and you want to have that final so-called stamp of approval, or bracha, whatever you call it. In other words, life is made that we must deal with keiches premium. God did not want a life where we just have Kabbalah sale and let your desire to be close to God rule your life. Nasa v'nishma. It has to be internalized. That's the real interface. So in a way, this plays itself out. This is it. Ratzon has the Rav and authority part. Meichen has the persuasion part. Later, if you recall, we learned this many chapters later, the end of this book, volume 1 rather, there's those 3 steps, Ibr Yunika Meichen, how Meichen trains the midas, the emotions, to acclimate itself, to be harnessed and refined and matured. You need that. Because you need it to be internal, you need it to be owned, you need to own it. A Rav and a Shefet don't make you own it. They tell you what needs to be done. This is also different between, for example, Shushbina de Malka, Shushbina de Matronisa, Aaron and Moshe. Moshe was a teacher. Moshe was a Rav, he was an authority. Aaron was the Shalom Bayis, Erev Shalom, Talmid of Shalar. He went around, spoke to people, advised them, Chesed. Said Moshe was emes, Aaron was chesed. The Rebbe had many sikhs, kachishah, kachidetas. That's why the halacha, some places like Aaron, because Aaron understood the situation on the ground. Not that Moshe didn't, but Moshe's role was not that. Moshe's role was to tell you what God wants. Aaron's role was to figure out how do you adapt to it, how do you internalize it. The Rebbe brings that Reish Masya. You want to appoint a leader of a city, you don't appoint a Talmid Chacham, a scholar. The Rebbe says, who do you then appoint? An Amoritz? So the Rebbe said, Talmid Chacham, meaning like a Moshe, whose main thing is to teach Torah. Of course you point someone that's wise, but someone that's wise in wisdom of the ground, of people's lives. Not just book smart, so to speak. Not that Moshe didn't have the other, but the focus. So this is throughout Torah, throughout Judaism, you'll find these two elements. And I just wanted to add that. I think it helps a little practical context in a way. I think it's very fitting, because all the things you say about Ratzon is exactly that. And Rav, obviously you could have a chaver, a Talmud chaver. You have a person who's your Rav and your friend. Another story, but the point being, it's two different elements. And usually it's probably, according to the Mishnah, simply, on a basic level, literally means two different individuals. And all this is because the essence of your desire extends, transmits to impact every aver and every faculty. The Atzmus HaRatzon. Remember, he began with the Atzmus in the previous chapter. The point here is, begins a parenthesis, which lasts how long? We'd like to know where we are going to end the parentheses. Just a few? Oh yeah, it's the beginning of the next page. The intention here is not that the essence of the desire, mamish, literally transmits into each organ, each faculty. Because in truth, the general transmission here is only a reflection. So then what does he mean, atzmi? And by there, before he said faculties, only intelligence, he said only ha'ara, only chitzenius enters into the other faculties. So he's not qualifying this distinction. What he means here, the convention is that it's not a reflection that comes through a gradations, level to level to level. When it comes to intelligence, like he said, when you train, let's say, your fingers to write or to draw. So the fingers that are not becoming a brain, a mind. You have a reflection of, as I said yesterday, a reflection of intelligence, and it's only the outer dimension of intelligence. It's a reflection of the intelligent process, because it's not like the fingers go through an intelligent process, and it's only the outer level, like the depth of the piece of art that you've drawn. Fingers don't have to necessarily relate to it. All they have to do is make it. So they have to, it's like koyach maisi. It's like a seichel maisi. It's the intelligence of craftsmanship, not the intelligence that lies behind the whole story within it. So it's only a reflection. But there, it's a gradation. It's shtalshus. I'm sorry. Like there, like in internal faculties, the inner faculties, that manifest in containers. The actual faculty is in the container, that where it manifests. So there we have, let's say, the brain, the mind is inside the brain in a manifest way. And therefore, when this mind has to affect another faculty, what you're only getting is a reflection, canal, Perek Nun Aleph, Bepu'ulas HaSeichel. Like we learned in the previous chapter, 51, about how the Seichel impacts, like I just described it. So in the brain, what's going on in the brain is a whole machine is going on there. You are concentrating, you're focusing, you have a very deep idea. Then you say, I want to convey this idea. I need my fingers to do this. The fingers are trained now to draw something. Someone looks at the painting, they say, wow, there's a lot of depth in this painting. The fingers are so smart. No, the fingers were instruments that a reflection. They have an intelligence, but they're not the depth. So it's only ha'ara. He's qualifying what he means by ha'ara and etzem. Because also Ratzon, he says ha'ara. The main, he says, it's not the point is ha'ara and etzem, it's whether it goes through gradations through this. If Ratzon also worked this way, that Ratzon wasn't a particular part of your being, and then a reflection of it goes through stages, it would not have this dominant power and of coercion and dominance and authority. Let me explain why. He said that earlier. Why? The reason why is because you see the fact that the mind is training the body to do something means it's reckoning with it. And if the fingers are not ready, they need to be trained. You can't just order them to do it. So it requires a training. It's like telling a child, I order you to know A, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. That's not going to work. You can tell a child, don't cross the street. You can in action. But if you want to train, Keiches Premium work by, as I said, a relationship. The relationship is to train and to use your body to go do what the mind wants. So the mind manifests. There's not an element of control. If the Ratzon worked the same way, that basically Ratzon is somewhere, and then it so to speak, it then manifests elsewhere in the same way, where and only a reflection of it, then it wouldn't have that dominant. Then Ratzon has to consider. Ratzon does not reckon with anything. It just desires something, and it's just like a bulldozer. Avaliyah sham shachar Ratzon beifin kazeh shababis. Avaliyah sham shachar Ratzon eine beifin kazeh shababis seder v'hadroga. The ishtalshus hakeiches. That's what he means by ha'ara. Since that Ratzon, the transmission of desire is not in a way that it comes in an orderly and progressive and hierarchical fashion. Hierarchy is also a good example, because kim sha'atzmus ha'araseh. See now he has atzmus ha'araseh. It's ha'ara, but it's atzmus ha'araseh. Is the essence of this reflection nimsha b'chol kayach. Rather, that the essence of its reflection extends into each faculty. So basically what he's disqualifying is what he said before in the beginning of chapter 51. He says, there he just said the word etzem and ha'ara. Now he's explaining what he meant by etzem. Etzem doesn't mean just the etzem. Like for example, the etzem everywhere would be atzmus. It exists everywhere. Ratzon means not that Ratzon is atzmus, essence exists everywhere. It's true, it doesn't have any particular container, but it means what he's explaining here. It's also not desire in its full intensity. So, for example, when you desire to move your finger, so just like with seichel, it's not like desire suddenly entered the finger. It doesn't enter. It's just ordering it to do it. So it's also, on one hand, only reflection. It's not like the finger is the desire. The finger is a product of the desire, like he said here, meaning it's also a reflection, but it doesn't come through a whole process of, okay, let's train, let's talk, let's communicate, which means, in other words, the ha'ara of faculties is a process. The ha'ara of Ratzon is simply a command. It would be like a king is commanding a subject that lives in a distant country, do this and this. So yes, the desire and the command of the king is ordering him to do it, but it's not like the king is necessarily there. It's a command of the king. It's a decree. You may not even see the king. But it's not coming to you through a whole process that first will educate you, and then we'll teach you, and then you're ready for it or not. So basically, that's what he's saying here. So we have etzem mamish, you have ha'ara atzmis, which is how Ratzon works, and you have ha'ara, plain ha'ara, which is how faculties work. Ha'ara meaning gradations, ha'ara atzmis means it's the etzem is function. The etzem is a control, but you don't just have the etzem; you have its so-called result of the etzem. You want to call it a product of the etzem. And that's what he's saying here in the parentheses. The thoroughness here is just unbelievable. I mean, it qualifies everything. Huh?
Very
Subtle. Okay, listen. I'm sure I could use more explanation. It's a parentheses. Let me tell you something. We could study one period our whole lives, to be honest. I'm just rolling along here. I don't know. Maybe we'll do when we finish the whole Ayin Beis, maybe we'll do version 2, which will take the. But I think I frankly am satisfied because at least we're getting so-called pshat with some iyun here. I'm thinking it's pretty much the iyun, but frankly, so this is deep and it's a limit and it's something you can learn and learn and learn. So now we're on top of the 92 after the parentheses. Al kain yesh b'koyach hashlita v'amshal lifal b'kol hakeches.
Go back to the first line.
Yeah, let's go back. Because it's atzmus haratzon. He just qualified what he meant by atzmus haratzon. In other words, atzmus haratzon meaning the ratzon is not going through any type of dilution or filters and buffers. Maybe that's a good way to put it. There's no filters and buffers going on here. It is what it is. What you see is what you get. However, as he explained, it's a ha'ara atzmis. It's not the essence itself. Al kain, therefore, yesh bekeich hashlita v'amshala has the power of dominance and control. Lifol b'kol hakeches, to affect all the faculties. Upayol b'kulam b'shava, and affect them all equally. In other words, the desire to move your toe, or desire to move your finger, or desire to eat, or desire to think, and so on. It's all equal type of thing. There's no desire is desire. The faculties have to consider how to do it. But the desire tells you what to do. It's like we say about the Meraglim. Their sin was the scouts. They got involved in, as we say, you control the weather, not the how. I'm sorry, you control the how, not the weather. That's the expression. God said you're going into the promised land. That's not up to an election or a vote. The Meraglim was sent to figure out how to do it. They was figured out to be not Ratzon. The Ratzon Hashem is to go into Eretz Yisrael. Why are you tampering with God's Ratzon? You don't like it? It's difficult. Al korchach hatachai. That's exactly it. God forces the soul to go. There's no questions asked. You here are alive. That's Ratzon. But now I want you to figure out how to do it. How to do it, scout out the land, figure out where to go. How to live your life. But whether you should live your life, it's not up to you. That's compelled by above. God says you must go down. Al korchach, that's mamash ratzon. The soul doesn't want to go. But that's an order. Now, once there's the order, now figure out the best way to do it. Live a good life. Live a life that's for purpose. That's why the halacha here is Shammai. More pleasant not to be born than to be born. So the Alter Rebbe asks, so what's going on here? So why are we born? And that's the halacha. The answer is because Nuach, pleasant. Shammai is right. But if you talk about kavanah, purpose, it's more purposeful to be alive. Hillel felt it's not just purposeful, it's also more pleasant. Why? It's not so clear, because he was a man who lived in poverty, almost died and stopped in a snowstorm because of that. But he was a happy man, so I guess he saw the beauty of life. It's another discussion. You'd think that he had a good life. But he said, Nuach La'adam. Yeah. That's another analysis. You ever think about that? Like why Taka Hillel said Nuach La'adam. I mean, it's Chesed Taka. He saw the beauty of life. Okay. Anyway, we'll move on. Gamkein, and it's also understood. It's also for the record a very powerful thing. You can mark and say chapters 49, 50, 51, 52 in Ayin Beis. If you want the sugi of Ratzon and Keiches, you have it all here. It'd be interesting to see if there's anything missing. Like in other Maimorim, there's anything that's added, because this is like so thorough. Anyway, Umuvan Gamkein, it's also understood it's also understood that the transmission of desire that transmits in all the organs of the body and affects them. He's now adding another thing. It's not actually revealed. This is a new thing, a new distinction. So he concluded with the thing of Atzem, which was what he began before in chapter 51, and now he's going to another distinction, which I will add to my list. What does that mean? It's not like as it is with the pnimi, with the immanent energy, with the internal faculties, the inner faculties. How does it work there? There is a revelation. Pnimi is revealed in the containers. It's in a form of being mixed together. Hisarvus means it's involved, and therefore it's immersed. And hisarvus means it's mixed in. And it's united with the faculties. Being that Ratzon desire is not in the form of an energy in a container. And the Hamshachah, so the first thing is it's not an air and a kli, and it's a transmission that comes from the essence of the Ratzon. What you see is what you get. The Ratzon itself is commanding. It's not going through any type of gradations and hierarchy and a process, as he said, of growth and maturity and training and so on. Sheni begeder is galus mamish. So something that's not an air and keli, and it's an extent and a transmission from the essence, is not in the gather of Mizgalus Mamish. He's calling it Mamish. Remember, throughout Ayin Beis, Chassidus in general, you have things that are Mamish and things that are not Mamish. Like when you say Pshitus Mamish, means it's absolutely shapeless. When you say Pshitus Lefierech, it's not absolute. Relative to another level, it is. So he's saying here, not that he's not saying it's Behelim, concealed, and he's not saying it's not revealed. It's not revealed in the fullest sense of the word. That's the word mamish means. Is that the essence, meaning the power, the intensity of the desire, which dominates, is there in the organ, and the faculty that it's impacting. But it's in a form of makif, meaning that it does not unite, it does not join with the faculty. Like we spoke earlier, where the vision, the power of vision, joins with the actual physical eye, like a hand inside of a glove. This is what means makif. If you remember a few chapters back, he said makif from Tanya Perek Mem Ches. Makif seviv does not mean, Perek Mem Tes. It does not mean that in Pirshu that seviv mamayla, it's above surrounding. It means it's in there, but it's not containable. So you could almost say that makif is not begili mamish, and panimi is begili mamish. That's one other way to define it. So, for example, when we talk about the divine in nature, mamala kalamin, who makemi shalelam, where God is like you said before, as milei kol haaretz kveidei, His glory. You're talking about a reflection. What's there? You see it. You may not call it divine, but you see the organization of the world. You see God giving life. You see the life force. Someone says, what about Seviv Kalam? Seviv Kalam you cannot see by studying the universe. You can extrapolate. You can, through Yediyas HaShlila, can come to realize that God is not some part of nature. Nature is God, but God is not nature. But when you look at, you want to say, the soul? Yes, if I look at my family, I see a person's alive, healthy. That's a miracle. I'm talking about not free will to say it's something else, but it's something called neshima v'neshima. Every breath you take is a blessing. But then when you talk about that, so therefore what he's saying is there's begili mamish because it's manifest. Whereas makif, it does not connect to the koyach. So God's wisdom you see in nature, for example. You see in nature the eloquence, the poetry, the symmetry of things working. Just like you see a good machine, a beautiful painting, you say, wow, this must be an artist that really is a master. So it's there, it's his galus mamish, because what is invested and manifest in the product is in an internal way. Whereas the makiv, it's not internalized in that sense. That's now the mamish, he's going to explain. And even though you cannot say that it doesn't connect, attach at all, so we're not talking about, as I said, something that's based on faith. Like, you could figure out, even with a human being, when someone moves their finger, you realize it's not basically purely intelligence. The desire wants me to move the finger right now. So there is a manifestation there. It's not just the example I just gave that's based on faith. We know the Seviv Kalam. I mean, he's going to probably explain how this is also Ruchnis Lamala, but Lamata, it's not. You can't say it doesn't have any connection because it's affecting the person. And we said before, there's an illness, mania, which I said we need to figure out what that illness is, that stops that flow coming from the desire. We spoke about an illness where a person, everything is intact, but the desire is not affecting the person. And if the desire was completely distant, how could it affect them? How would it affect them? Or in them? How would it cause an effect in them? And you wouldn't be able to even apply the word hamshacha. You can't say hamshachas haratzon. Meaning that hamshachas haratzon means there's a transmission going on here. Something is speaking to something else. Yes, it's a command. Yes, it's an equalizer. It's not manifest in an internal way. And the ratzon, at least, at minimum, al kaponim, are being transmitted to impact on the bakeches lifel, on the faculties that they should have, that they should function. So So he's explaining this. So the inyan in this she'ein b'chinas hischaber k'mei eir v'kli, meaning mamish. It's not an attachment. Hischaber is more than just a connection. It's connection, not just a connection like an energy in a container. Shakli tefeses by eir, where the container actually grasps and contains the energy. Upoyel by shinui liyas k'mei kli, and it affects it to have a shinui. It changes it. It tailors it to be like the container. Like we spoke before, mashpia makabel, where you have when the mashpia has to prepare to teach and the student is recipient. The student is affecting the teacher. The teacher isn't just bestowing light and anyone takes it as they see fit. There's a tailored relationship going on, as I said before. And also when the kli becomes stronger, the strengthening and the growth, development, maturity of the container causes an additional flow of energy and revelation, as we see. By contrast, desire, where the organs and the faculties do not grasp them in a way liful boy that cause the desire, does not grasp it, the desire, to cause it to have some shinui. It doesn't cause any shinui. Yes, obviously, if a faculty, for example, God forbid, is damaged, so desire may not be able to fully express itself. If someone has, God forbid, a broken finger, can't move it. But that's not because the keli has affected the desire. It doesn't have a place to express itself. And that's the first thing. It's different, like you said. The first thing, shinui, and also the second thing. One second. And the second thing, just like it does not, the faculties through growth and their maturity does not cause an additional more power of desire to suddenly become. Your desire doesn't become more powerful because you became more mature, or because your containers have developed and are now more conducive. Okay. He's going back and forth, and even though the rotzen, desire, grasps the faculties the other way around. It does grasp the faculties. The faculties don't grasp the desire. Remember, the commander, the one giving the order is ordering something and has power over it. It's just not the other way around. It does not have power over the commander. So even though the desire, tefes, grasps the kechus and poel behem and affects them and causes an effect in them, that's exactly right. You see what he's saying? Remember the expression he said before? By chapter 49, he says, from Zohar, he says, from Tanya brings, Ihu tofis bekula alman, he grasps in all the worlds. Well, less man the tofis bayan, there's nothing that can grasp him. Or, hu makayim shalelam, he's the place of the world, but the world is not his place. So now he's basically saying that Ratzon does grasp, and in other words, controls and affects the object, but the object does not. But it's not reciprocal.
But there is a feedback mechanism where Ratzon could change from the fullus of the object.
He's saying not right now.
Usually not. He's not saying absolutely not.
Well, he's saying absolutely.
Obviously,
I would say. Where do you see that?
We're commanded to daven, and by davening and this and that, we can actually affect the Ratzon.
Who says you're affecting the Ratzon? You're affecting your...
For example, you get even higher and go to the Bala Ratzon.
I don't know if that applies here. First of all, he's not talking Avodah right now, and it doesn't affect the desire. You're talking now that it brings more godliness into a person. He's talking about the pure Ratzon desire. Anyway, the way he's saying it right now, it's not. He's talking more practically. He's saying, so then he says, okay. Nevertheless, the faculties do not grasp in the desire to cause it to change in any way. Because as I said, desire is just telling you what it wants. It's not asking you, it's not training you, it's not communicating with you. This is what it is. Because it's not coming, because it does not come in islapshus mamash. It's not actually manifesting in a literal way. It's It always remains detached and apart. So it's not asking, because like God not asking the Meraglim whether we're going into Israel or not. It doesn't matter whether the Meraglim come back and say we can't go. It doesn't change the desire. I'll just give you that as an example. What you're asking is that when a person does do what God wants, does it add in God's desire? I don't know if it adds in God's desire. It adds in God's pleasure. The desire remains the same. He wants us to make a dir b'tachtein. And when we do it, we fulfill His desire. I don't know if it changes His desire. You fulfilled His wish. In our own Avodah, what you're doing is drawing more godliness. But he's not applying it in Avodah now. I don't want to confuse. What he's saying here is completely sensible. How desire works. Havdalah. So the few words that he used there, I think, are critical. Is number one, he used the word hisgalus, slapshus, schabrus, and havdalah. These are all words that basically talk about relationship. They're all different words. Hislapshus is when you're invested, you manifest in something in a internal way. Like you're not just standing. The opposite of hislapshus would be havdalah. Pnimi manifests. Makif remains apart. Hischabrus is more a chibur of two things. Asardus is even deeper union. You lose all these different words. He's using all these words here. Bottom line, just to help us understand, but he's not really distinguishing them here. In other places, he does. But bottom line is that Ratzon is not mamish hisgalus, not mamish slapshus, not mamish hisardus, and more havdalah. Separate, detached. I think the relationship is a critical element. It's the way to really relate to it. When there's a relationship, there's a certain equality or certain, let's call this one, proportion. Ratzon, there's no desire, has no proportionate relationship with the things. It's a commander. It's the Rav. It's giving you, it's telling you what the soul wants. Again, remember, in reality, you have to look at a situation and say what's really affecting it. It can be Ratzon, partially Seichel, partially Midas. He's just dissecting it, talking. To understand it, you have to think in pure forms. In reality, the fact is when a human being is functioning, there's a lot of things. It's not just a desire and action. There's other forces often at work as well. But you could dissect it. Extreme situations, the Akedah. So there you need to see that something happened there. Avram should be able to suppress all those feelings, the Mesiras Nefesh. But generally speaking, there's a process that requires all of them. Okay.
Malchus kicked upstairs.
Okay. He's like tying it all up now, and that's why it also affects all the faculties equally. So he added now this whole thing about his galus and how it manifests, which was not stated specifically earlier, even though you could say it was implied. And now he's going back, and that's why it affects in all the faculties equally. I'm sorry, min kayach hasechel shebereish. From. That's why it affects all the faculties equally, from the power of intelligence, the faculty of intelligence in your head, to the power of walking in your leg, from head to toe, basically, equally. Hein betenu chitzenis, both in external movement, shapel beregel kamei b'harash, that affects the movement, the walking of the legs, just like it affects the brain, the thinking in the mind. Conceiving in the mind, and also in the revelation of the faculties. In other words, not just in chitzenius, not just in physical movement, even in the revelation of faculties. Because you could say, the desire, what it does is, moving my toe, moving my hand, beginning to conceive ideas, that's equal. You're saying also in the revelation, or moving my head actually, and moving my toe, you could say there's an equalizer. He says no, also in the deeper level, in the revelation of the faculties, meaning in the expression of the faculties, the Ratzon is also an equalizer there. Like it says all this at length in the Hemshech Samach Vav, which was said 6 years earlier in Ayin Beis. Okay, so in other words, what he said now, let's see here. The last 6 pages is not arichas enough. Samach Vav is where the arichas is. Okay? I like to see what some of. I want to compare the length there.
This is what I know you touched on.
But maybe this specific element he's speaking about, that how to shove. I have to look exactly some of again. Some of there's the section on Rotzen and Tainug. Yeah, that's where it is in the beginning there. Okay. Yeah.
No, this we touched upon it yesterday. I mean, the secular world says the same. We touched upon it yesterday.
They may not use the word desire, but they definitely use the word. See, he said before word gidei rotzen.
Transmitters and stuff.
Yeah, they'd use they would start where they'd say something causes the mind to send messages. That's something we would call the desire of the soul, basically, because someone has, it has to begin. Like what causes a person to want to move their toe? So you could say we know what a person has to do to move their toe, which means you can trace it. The toe has in it nerves. Those nerves connect to bigger nerves.
But according to this,
One second, hold on. Those nerves then connect to the spinal cord. They go up to the brain, and that's how it travels. That's how you communicate. The question is why. What caused the brain to send such a message? So I see no reason why anyone who's a neuroscientist wouldn't say that fine, call it Ratzon, call it desire. Why not?
it's the brain that's sending the message.
That I just told you that's how it's done. But who's pressing the first button? Who's saying it should be done? Who made that choice? There's a desire in the soul, because you could have everything functioning and no one pressed it, but no one said go. That's all we're talking about there. There's no motivation. Fine. Let's put it this way. As I said, a scientist can only discuss the process of something that's observable. Of course, you could have a whole discussion, because you said earlier, you could say, why do you have the desire for this? Is because deep back in your memories, 30 years ago, something happened. So therefore, when you see a mouse, you jump. Whatever it is. Fine, that's an analysis of why. But that's something inside your memory banks. Look, the real atheists, or would love to just turn everything into just electrical impulses, and dismiss any type of free trade. The guy just wrote now another Sam Harris, who first wrote books against God. He's an advocate, a very radical atheist. He's a fundamentalist, basically. So there's now books called Free Choice, completely debunking the idea that there's free choice. Free will, maybe. I'm not getting now into the discussion of that matter. The bottom line is here to understand that there is, we are coming from an approach that God put the soul in the human being. The soul has faculties. Everything begins from the top down, not from the bottom up. A scientist, like one guy once told me, I'm a scientist. I work everything from the bottom up. I start from the bottom and I explore. I open the clock and I see what it's made of. You're telling me who put the clock here, and he made all the things. I go from the bottom up. So they can only go that far. How far can they go? They can't tell you what the clockmaker is like. Meaning the God. But anyway, let's continue here. Well, the Cheder now in long parentheses. Anybody sees the size of it?
Yeah. 10 lines. Beginning of the line.
Yes. Well, the Cheder now. Apparently, yeshini berotzen b'teisvus v'geroyin lekeches primim. Here we go, doctor. He's asking a question that you suggested. The Cheder, we do see a change in the will and the desire more, and that it's more or waker through the internal faculties. The Onurayim, we see kashayesh is galos keches apnimim, that when the internal faculties are revealed, ozmiz gala gam ken aratzim b'teis v'ser, also the desire is drawn out and becomes increasingly as an increasing, I would say, is amplified, or is a stronger desire. I'll give you an example. Like when a person conceiving or delving into Hamaskel, he's conceiving a very great haskalah, a great idea, a big concept. With the power of a seichel, with the faculty of a seichel, which is internal faculty. How do you ozmerutza b'yeser? He then is much more, his desire is much more satisfied. He's more marutza, he's more, not pacified is not the right word. more content, meaning the desire is more alive. I don't know how he's going to answer this, whether this is pleasure or not, but he's basically saying that seemingly faculties that are, let's say, not functioning or weaker or not, yes, the desire is also not that manifest. If the faculties are functioning, something from the desire gets fed and becomes more powerful, more merutza. We said before.
More apparent, or does the desire change, or does it?
That's what he's saying. He's apparently saying. He's asking a question. He's saying apparently there is a change. Obviously, he's not going to conclude that way. Merutza means more. We said the word content is a good word. V'chein ish, another example. V'chein ish atev k'she'esed tev v'chesed. A good person, a kind person, when he actually does something good and something kind, that too makes him a more content, fulfills that part of his desire. So seemingly the desire is not so detached, basically. It's impacted back and forth. It's not just a one-way street. It would be like the king has satisfaction when you listen to his order. I'm not saying that's exactly. Seemingly. U'kamoi kein hu yidei tesvus chayis pnimi, u'kamoi nizba lechem v'niyah tevim. The same thing, here he just said that there's more and less of. The same thing is that there's a tesvus chayis pnimi. One second. Tesvus chayis pnimi. In the desire? Okay. That there's an additional, there's a tesvus chayis. How do you say tesvus? Not just additional. An amplified tesvus chayis. An overflow. An expanded. There's an expansion. I don't know why I'm saying chayis pnimi. Anyway, of inner chayis pnimi. Yeah, but he's saying that he wants to say that it affects the desire.
Yeah, exactly.
So chayis pnimi is referring to what?
He's going to give a mashal.
I know the mashal, but is the mashal saying that it gives more chayis to the desire, or it gives more chayis to the?
No,
What's chayis pnimi mean?
That means it feeds, the desire feeds off the internal.
But what the word chayis pnimi is referring to, tesvus chayis pnimi.
Right. Chayis pnimi would be not only the brain, but also the internal organs.
Uh-huh. So that will add. So the same thing is okay. So one thing is that the mind, and the same thing now we said midas, that they both, when they are functioning and they're actually giving or conceiving and so on, it adds contentment to the desire. The same thing is tesvus chayis pnimi. When there's more chayis pnimi, inner energy, you're getting more revitalized. Is the word vitality. Kamoi nizba lechem, v'nizba lechem. Nizba from the word seveya here, I assume, right? I think v'nizba lechem, that when you're sated with bread, v'niyah tevim, and they will feel good. The kasher hudov, when a person is hungry, harihu masragiz u'miskayis, he gets angry and upset, agitated. Anyone fits this description? Vayidei hasvia, yes, svia. Vayidei svia, when he's sated, nasa teva merutza, he feels good, he becomes pleasant and content. So all this we see seemingly that the inner faculties have an impact the other way on desire. However, this contentment is not that there is a revelation of desire. When this happens, it's not like there's a new desire. Let me read it till the end, because the language here. Okay. Because this thing, this so-called chayir chayzer, this reflective, this return, reciprocal pleasure, or the contentment, is not that we don't have here at Adayin any desire that he wants something. Only thing is, it became content. It's like it's a result of what happened. One second. It's only in a form of cause. It's only like an incidental result. It's an incidental consequence. That could allow for some awakening. Not sure what he means by Yisayridus here. Let me finish the parentheses. That's the main primary answer. Okay. Let me read till the end of the parentheses. And the primary element here is that this marutza, this contentment is related to pleasure. Because he has pleasure in the intelligence, or in the goodness, the kindness, and so on, and other matters, that's why he becomes content. It's what the pleasure it draws and attracts the desire, not that the faculties themselves do so. Elicits. You have any thoughts on the pshat here?
So you have to remember it's still
The language. I understand. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't understand it. Hold on. What's the answer? Okay.
It's not what's in the Rebbe.
You have a rotzon to eat, and it's satisfied.
That's not directly impacted by the kaiches. It's only
No, that's the second half. That's the ikar. Before the ikar adover, he says something here. Hold on. What time do we have?
10 o'clock almost.
Second.
It's basically saying that Merutza and Rotzin is not really the exact same thing. He didn't generate a new desire. He just feels complacent.
Didn't take away the desire.
Satisfied it. So we see that there's
At that point, there's no desire. You have a desire to eat, and then it's sated, and then you don't have that desire anymore. Hashem desired you to do a mitzvah, you did it. Okay, on to the next desire. Okay.
right. At that level.
Okay. I would say I go back to what I originally just interpreted. I don't see something more than that. Seemingly, after we study it more, I'll review it again in my mind. But let me just say what I think is pshat here. I think there's two key points here. One is, like for example, when let's use the comparison. When the faculty, the keli, a relationship. So there, it's like a teacher and a student. There's a real relationship going on. Teacher gives, the student gives back. Student has to be prepared. As he said before, when the containers are more refined, they mature, grow, it draws more seichel. That's very clear. Containers are not that conducive, the seichel will not flow. So there's a give and take all the time. Rotzen doesn't work that way. We know that. So this parenthesis is not suddenly saying that Rotzen is like seichel. That's for sure not the case. He's trying to understand, however, there is something that does come back. He's trying to understand what is that. Cannot contradict the point that was just made, because it's a fact. That desire is not being fed by the faculty. Yet something does happen to the desire. So he's explaining what that is. So he's calling it, that's what he thinks the words are, to really be medayik. Einze his galus harotzen. You see, when the koyach, the faculty, the aver, the organ, or the faculty is more refined, it makes more of his galus of seichel. More seichel will be there. Here, the satisfaction that you have when all these things happen doesn't mean there's more seichel. It means desire is more manifest. It's more content. It's more satisfied. It doesn't mean that there's more rotzen coming. There's more revelation. In other words, let me take it to the logical conclusion. If a king decrees something and then he hears that his subject listened, he'll be content, and he won't be content if he didn't listen, so to speak. So it means that his order was fulfilled, his decree was. But does that make his rotzen stronger? Like, is that like going to say, okay, now I'm going to make more decrees, or no? Because the rotzen didn't come as its motivation was not that you should fulfill it. Its motivation is because I want to get done what I want to get done. The king has to get something done, so he orders it. Ratzon is focusing on the soul's intentions. That's all that matters. Now that you fulfilled it, the Ratzon has satisfaction and contentment. But it's not like it's now opened the channel, and now that I know that you listen to me, I'm going to give you more orders. I know that would seem logical. Because
the opposite seems like there'd be no more Ratzon too. You can say this is easy.
Exactly. My point is that there's an element that's true, that if a king sees that you're listening to me, but that's completely something else. That means he has someone to work with. Not because you're causing him to have more to say. Ratzon is an expression of a desire of the soul. Now that it's been fulfilled, for sure. If the Ratzon, let's say, desires, let's put it this way, to walk somewhere, and you're unable to walk there, the Ratzon will not be happy. It will not be merutz. It will not fulfill the soul's, whatever the reason was. We're not talking about because you don't listen. It commands. But for some reason the containers are not ready. You know, like I said, God forbid, that mania, the disease. That you want, you desire. So what he's saying is not his galus haratzon. What you have is, he's saying, is mashu merutza. You have a product, a result. Something does speak back. But it's more giving me back the fulfillment of my desire, the contentment, not the revelation. Because in this response, this satisfaction, you don't have here any rotzen, that he wants something. You know, when you eat and you feel satisfied, or you're thinking you feel satisfied, it's not like some rotzen was developed as a result. The rotzen did its thing, you fulfilled it, and now the rotzen can feel very satisfied, content. I achieved what my soul wanted to achieve. So how does it act by derech siba? What he means by derech siba means not like, it's only as like a incidental cause, not a direct tool that draws out more energy of the ratzon. That's basically what he means. The Eze is that there should be some, in other words, of contentment. Then he adds, it's not a second answer, then it says v'ikra dover, but he does add something, because right there answers the question. You have the question answered. Then he adds one more thing, that there's a buffer going on here. It's not the faculties directly speaking back to the desire. It's the faculty speaking to the pleasure, which tells the ratzon. So that's what's going on. The desire, meaning the will, commands. Now you've done what you had to do. Let's say the conceiving of ideas, doing a favor, whatever it may be. Now there's a chezer coming back that you're content. So it's not the faculties directly back to the ratzon. The faculties speak to the pleasure, and the pleasure speaks to the desire. That's what he's saying here technically. So that he says, this whole thing, relationship, is the contentment shaykh to time, because now you have pleasure from the reason he's saying pleasure from the idea or from the kindness. Through this you become content. So as the enig. So in other words, that which draws more of that desire, meaning more contentment and so on, is from the pleasure, not from that. Now here it doesn't elaborate, but if you look in Samach Vav, and later I think in Ayin Beis too, it works the following. Does it all begin with this? The question is, you could say it all begins with pleasure. First you have a pleasure, then you have a desire, then you have the fulfillment of the desire, then the content, that fulfillment goes back and tells to the pleasure, it gives me pleasure, and the pleasure tells the desire it was fulfilled, so there's more contentment. But he's going to speak in Samach Vav and Ayin Beis that there's also sometimes situations where it begins with ratzon. Like for example, with Avram Avinu, it didn't begin with pleasure. It begins with God commanding him to do an akedah. There's no pleasure at all there. The opposite, if anything. That will dominates and just says, this is what you have to do, repress, suppress all feelings. 1 second. Then when that's done, there's a contentment that goes back and can cause a pleasure because he fulfilled what I wanted.
In all cases, there's no pleasure. It's only the hope of pleasure that causes ratzon.
No, that's not correct. No. That's not for now, but this is discussed elsewhere. This is not the discussion here. I just gave 2 examples. It's sometimes like that, sometimes like that. It's not true. Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu. Everything begins with God's taiva. Their pleasure is the first root. In Samach Vav, there's a whole discussion, and Ayin Beis, that discusses which one starts the process. Is it tainug or is it ratzon? And there's 2 opinions. Bottom line, tainug is the ultimate. The question is what you mean by tainug. There's hidden tainug, there's atzmi, tainug gilui. There's a lot of levels of pleasure. Not that relevant here. Here is more. I just wanted to qualify it because it's just.
Taiva doesn't mean timing, does it?
Why not?
Doesn't taiva mean you want to have a timing?
It's not the timing that we call pleasure, but it's taiva. It doesn't say, but Ratzah Hakadosh Baruch Hu liyas leider b'tachtenim. It says nesava. Shukav amudei sheish shtekik. It's all words of pleasure. That's one of the proofs that pleasure comes first. Does it have to come? That's another story. But why is that relevant here? How is that? I brought it up, but what I'm saying, why? What's?
It's relevant.
No, what is the problem? I'm saying, what are you trying to say? That there are things that don't begin with pleasure. I also just said that, like Ta'akeda. But there are many things that do begin with pleasure. Yeah. The soul wants to have pleasure.
Kind of that Avraham Avinu would listen to what he said.
No, it doesn't say such a thing. It says God has a taiva that he wants a dir b'tachtenim. But it comes to Akeda, you could say God wanted it. It doesn't say that he had a taiva for that. Taiva is used on the fundamental purpose of existence. There's things we say all about it. God wants. Sometimes you use ratzon, sometimes chayfetz, and sometimes tainug. There's different expressions in different situations. It's not for right here. The point, the bottom line is we're talking here about the human. And all this is because the desire is a revelation from the essence of the soul. It's after the parentheses. That's not in the category, it's not in the league of manifestation in containers. What's kol zeh? Kol zeh meaning, the first thing that he said, that it's not really revealed, and the second thing that he said, that the Ratzon impacts the faculties, but the faculties don't impact the desire.
Kol zeh is before the parentheses.
Yeah, which I'm saying. So one impacts the other, not the other way around. And it's an equalizer. It's everything. Kol zeh is everything. It's a gili v'etzon nefesh, and it's not begeder slash b'kelim. V'gam ein boi chilukim madreges be'etzem ki'im hu keich ve'er poshet. And also it's not distinguished. It doesn't have gradations and levels, but fundamentally, it's a air poshet. It's a seamless, shapeless, substanceless energy. Al kein b'hamshachos b'chol mokim. That's why it transmits everywhere equally. B'chol mokim everywhere. Shenimshachu. I'm sorry. Al kein b'hamshachos b'chol mokim shenimshachu. Al kein b'hamshachos. Okay. And that's why when it's transmission, wherever it transmits. The essence of the keich, like he said, the ha'ara of the essence, it itself goes there, and it doesn't mix misachel and unite with the faculties or wherever it's going, and it affects all the faculties equally. And now he's going to conclude. This is all the dogma, the example. The dogma is that Yuvan Beir and Sefer Klalman, and an example of this is understood in the infinite divine light of Sefer Klalman, the transcendent energy. This is the supernal will. That does not come into any division or levels. Any distinctions. The like the Maimon Zal, which he brought also in the beginning of the Discourse, many chapters back. I believe it was chapter 4, where he says like this. That's why the Chazal say, do not weigh, don't sit and weigh the mitzvahs of the Torah. Because even the most lenient of the lenient and the most strict of the strict are all equal compared to the desire. Right. So on the level, if you talk on the level of Chachma, of Koiches, there's a distinction. That's why it's Kalas and Chamuras. The level of the will, desire, there's no distinction. He wants it and that's it. Makes no difference, a small thing, a big thing. And the same with the chiyuv. I missed the line. Even though there is lenient and severe and stringent, from the perspective of the internal energy, the immanent energy, but nevertheless, from the perspective of the supernal will, Makif, they're all equal. And that's why, this all go back in chapter 4, he says this. And that's why also in the responsibility to do mitzvahs, everybody's equal. We're talking about the mitzvahs that are shaykhs to everybody. There's no one person more equal than the other. It's not like in Torah, with his levels. Like he said back there, that a person who works is Perek Echad Shachas, Perek Echad Darvis, different times of responsibility of when they learn. This is all back there, the inner dimension of Torah, Chetzenish B'Torah. So we see there's two levels. There's no such thing in mitzvahs, Primis HaMitzvahs, and Chetzenish HaMitzvahs. And also in the details within mitzvahs. I'm sorry. The chiyuv is going afterwards. He's saying now that mitzvahs, everything is equal. Meaning you put on tefillin, everybody has to put on tefillin the same way. With Torah, there's levels. There's the inner Torah, there's the outer Torah. And then there's details within the Torah, different sections of the Torah, so on. Also responsibility of studying Torah, not everyone's equal. The Yeshve'el meaning scholars, Yeshve'el literally people who are occupied, people who are not laymen, clergy, I guess, whatever. Yeshve'el, people who are involved in studying, literally means those that sit in the tents. Yeshve'el is of course, Baalei Asik are workers, and Yeshve'el are scholars. Hachiv Shalem, their responsibility is Lasik B'Teira Kol Hayom, is to study in Asik Teira all day. Shalem Nemer V'Gisa B'Yem V'Layla. On them it says B'Yem V'Layla that you should V'Gisa B'Yem, you should immerse yourself in it. You should Harave, you should immerse in it. How would you say Hagisa? Harave in Teira, we're talking about Harave, struggling, immersing, investing day and night. Ubalei Asakim and worker and people who are workmen, lay people. A chapter in the morning, a chapter in the evening. But on the Rabbi contrast, the desire of mitzvahs, which is the essence of the desire, Ayin Beis Chalkas Madregas, does not have distinction of levels. And also in the responsibility. There's no such thing as an inner mitzvah and an outer mitzvah. There's no such thing as mitzvahs, there's no distinction. As he said, Kalas and Chamuras, they're all equal. And also responsibility, there's no distinction between people. Because desire is the revelation of Atzmus. Therefore, it doesn't have within it fundamentally the distinctions, divisions. And it does not manifest in any distinctions and divisions. Now, this revelation of the desire that comes through doing mitzvahs, which is the reciprocal will. In order to reveal this transcendent energy, we have to do mitzvahs. And the primary element of this is through the preparation, through the preparatory love of b'chol meidecha, with all my might, with all of me. This means fulfilling the desire of God. Shein shel mokim means the desire of God is called mokim in this case, space. Shemamshichim gilei harotzon. Through that you draw down this revelation of the transcendent energy. So now he's talking the Aveda of it already. He said this whole mashal of rotzon is to explain the higher rotzon, which is an equalizer. How do you transmit that? How do you draw that energy down, that transcendent energy? It's through mitzvahs, and primarily through the Ava B'chom, the love, the infinite type of love that you go out of yourself, out of your limits, in fulfilling this desire. Through that, you draw down the desire. Because through mitzvahs alone, even though you are drawing down God's will, desire, it's still concealed. Like it says in Tanya, in the pasuk Ani be'er v'lo eda, b'sefer shabenim, no? He says.
Al pasuk.
Al pasuk. I meant to say. I said al pi. I meant al pasuk. So saying shabenim on the pasuk in Tilim. Yeah. Ani ba'ar v'lo eda. I am like a bur, like an empty, like what do you translate a bur? No. Yeah, like an empty callus, not callus. V'lo Eida, and do not know. What's the lesson? Continuing lesson. Behemoth brought in Bas Legani. Behemoth Esimach. He brings in Bas Legani. Huh? Right. Ani Baer V'lo Eida Behemoth. She'ena Ratzon Murgish Klal. So this is the level where a person submits himself to God, but there's nothing is murgish. The desire is not felt. As a matter of fact, you feel empty. Nevertheless, even though it's concealed, it's still a fact that a mitzvah should draw another mitzvah, like he says there in Tanya. It also says, it's also like it says, Tum Tam V'das, with a good reasonable das, intelligence. Lamdeni, you've taught me, you've educated me, because I believed in your mitzvahs. So what's the connection? Because through doing mitzvahs, amuna, hamanti, with simple faith, through that draws the type of the keches premium, basically. That you should tuv tam. How do you translate tuv tam v'das lamdeni? Tuv tam v'das lamdeni. Tuv tam v'das means a solid type of understanding. Kafta v'ferach lamdeni. But bottom line is that's what mitzvahs do. Ach b'dei sheyi is galus haras u'zel adei gdoma avid b'chol medecha. But in order for there to be the revelation, this is all what the mitzvahs do on their own. But to reveal the Ratzon, this is through the preparation by Ava b'chol meidecha. That's why we say in V'hafta Hashem b'chol levavcha b'chol nafscha b'chol meidecha, and then you say the mitzvahs, Kshatam meid, and so on and so on. In other words, first you start with the Ava, and that love reveals the power of these mitzvahs. And the revelation of this desire is an actual action-oriented mitzvah. That are not necessarily, that are not a container. When you do an action, like you give tzedakah or put on tefillin, so there's no container really there. Well, it means a container within yourself. Obviously, there's a container. The tefillin is a container, but you're not having a relationship with the tefillin. You're putting them on. It's an action, using an object. In Torah is you have to understand and comprehend, and that's kli. Like you said before, if you remember, you said seichel is be'etzem pnimi. Torah requires understanding. We're not talking now lo yadamai ka'amar. You don't know what you're saying. Torah is understanding Torah. Desire does not manifest in containers. So God says, do a mitzvah. It's not a question whether you understand it, whether it's internalized or not, whether you get it. This is the command. Mitzvahs is like shaftim, and Torah in a way is like yetzayich, so to speak. Torah is understanding the reasoning, and so on. Nevertheless, it also it comes in a form of an internal feeling. Okay, it doesn't explain what that means. Maybe through the ava, meaning that, in other words, you could connect and feel deeply inside you that you want to do God's desire, even though it's not using all your faculties, so to speak, in an internal way. For his galus he b'chol mokim, and the revelation of desire is everywhere. Like the Maimon, that God desired to have a home in this lowest of worlds. Shalamati yegili er, that below there should be a revelation of energy. Here he's saying it's Ratzon. This is specifically the level of Ratzon. That does not manifest in containers, and nevertheless, and it's always and everywhere equal. Here he's not distinguishing. Here he's saying the Sava is like a Ratzon for all practical purposes, because he's right now Ratzon Tainug generally is one category, Makif. But the bottom line is that there's what desire of God, that there should be Lamata Gilead. That's all that matters. Everywhere equal. It's not manifest in containers. It's God's desire, and everywhere equal. Should we finish the Maimer already? Yeah, might as well.
Maybe Brazil adopting construction doesn't know the Sava Kodesh Baruch.
What Kamaimer?
Yeah, Kamaimer Sava Kodesh Baruch, fine. And it says Brazil adopting construction is going back now to what we were talking about
Yeah, you could say that, but the Kamaimer still is a follow-up of what says before. He's still using that as a proof. Okay, you could say what you're saying.
The Maimer is about Vislapshus B'chol Makim. Look at that. It's Galus B'chol Makim. The Maimer is about Vislapshus B'chol Makim.
Yeah, but why is he bringing the Sava? Why does he just say, why is it the Sava?
That the Giliyah should be B'chol Makim.
Yeah, but the Sava Kodesh Baruch Hu. Well, it doesn't matter. No, you're not helping me. You're making it worse, frankly. You're not helping, because it's not a contradiction. I know Nesava and Rotzen are two levels.
No.
It doesn't matter.
It's very possible to read it in another way. Because right after the parentheses being
my inclination is the Maimon Nesava. When you bring such a Maimer, he's speaking a lot more than just bringing a proof that it's B'chol. Why doesn't he just say Maleich or Kvedei or Aniyesh Hashem Hashem? There are expressions. He's speaking here. He's speaking God's desire. I think it's connected. It doesn't matter whether it's exactly the same level, but fine. It doesn't matter. However you turn it, it's still somewhat connected. I can't see that it's not. He didn't say Nesava is Rotzen. I didn't say that exactly, but it's awfully close. Saying Rotzen and Muslapshus B'Kelim. Okay, Nesava Kodesh Baruch Hu is basically saying that all the mitzvahs fulfill that equally. Whereas Torah, there's distinctions. Fine, it's all right. I don't mind saying that it's also more than that, just for the record. It doesn't change the picture. Let me do quickly the end here. According to the above, we'll understand what it says in the beginning of the Maimer. That now Israel, the question was, is this such a small matter? To have Yiras Hashem? Like Moshe says, Milsa Zutras, and Moshe is speaking about himself, not about the people. It's known that Yira or is bittul, is self-nullification and suspending yourself, and placing yourself aside, your essence. Higher Yira or is a fundamental bittul, and Yira Tachta is kabol sel shemach shamayim. It's not through and through. It's that you just accept the yoke of heaven, like it says elsewhere. This power of awe is inside of the souls from the essence. That's because of by virtue of the essence of their souls. That's higher than logic, and that's why they have fundamentally bittul. Love, on the other hand, that's yira. Love, on the other hand, is primarily through contemplation. Through contemplation, understanding the divine, which is internal. So yira is makif, basically saying bittul, and ava, love, is internal. This is the meaning. And now Israel, and Moshe is saying, what is God already asking of you? Only to have fear of Him. Because this, Moshe is saying, it's an expectation possible for every Israel, one from Israel can have this. If it was talking about love, loving God, which is dependent on intelligence and contemplation and understanding, not everyone is equally is capable of that. And there are many different levels, a multitude of levels of the way of understanding how much he's capable of understanding. But awe, which is from the essential faculty of the soul, makif, in other words, everyone individual can reach to this. And this is also easier than internal saga primis, internal contemplation. Because there you need to have containers and effort to refine the container. You have to work hard in that. And by contrast, the bittul, the subjugation, the nullification from the essence of the soul, is much easier. And that's what the Gemara answers, that it's a small thing. The be'emes, then a small thing, and the Gemara says, what do you mean small? Only by Moshe it's small. What about, is it a small thing? So he says, by Moshe it's small. So he's saying, no, small on everyone. The be'emes who came b'chol Yisrael. Every Jew has truly this level. Like he says in Tanya, because every one of us has a Moshe within us. He doesn't say. It looks like both.
Wow.
Well, let's put it this way. At least you're a Tata. You're a law, either one. V'amru ein l'gaba Moshe. That's what the Gemara says. Yes, yes. Compared to Moshe, it's a small thing. What does that mean? Shehu b'chinas hadas shebekol echad miYisrael. That's the level of das, the inner intelligence that is in every Israel, like it says in Tanya, Perek Ayin Beis, where he asks this question. It's the Moshe within. Aval be'em is benakal kol echad lo v'lezeh. And therefore, aval be'em is, but the truth. It's easy for everyone to come to this. Wow, is it? Why is it? Okay. In parentheses, primarily at least there shouldn't be the dominance. He's not qualifying. At least there shouldn't be a dominance of the chumnis b'yeser, of an increasing crassness. That conceals on this fundamental. In fact, someone who's just anarchist. Pre-Kasel means he throws off the yoke from himself. It's a Rahman al-Islam, God forbid, and similar. He's saying here, is qualifying. The fact is that we could have Ruach Shtus, so to speak. We could conceal this faculty. He says it's easy. You could conceal it by having an extensive form of crassness that conceals, like when a person has Pre-Kasel. Some they just defy all authority and don't listen, etc. The Inyan Hameya Brachas, and what's the connection? In Altikrama Elameya, he says that Ma Shasham Al. What's the connection? So the Inyan of the 100 blessings, Hushayi is Galus Haratzin, is that in order for it to be the revelation of this desire, like he said before, B'chol Meidecha Ava. Commission is like we discussed earlier. Shaydem it's Nimshach Haratzin Hu Behelamadayin. That through mitzvahs we Nimshach it transmits the supernal will, but it's still concealed. And the blessing on mitzvahs is that there should be a revelation of the desire through mitzvahs. That's the bracha, the blessing. And when through the mitzvahs there's the revelation of the desire. So when you have both together, when you have the mitzvah, when the mitzvahs with the blessing create a revelation of the desire, that means that it's nimshach that in the internal you have the etzem. You have here the whole interface of Ayin Beis. You want the transcendent to become internal. So we all have the transcendent. That's easy.
Actually, what he said here in the parentheses originally, that not the whole etzem goes in. Here it says that with the brachas it doesn't draw in the etzem.
Yeah. That doesn't necessarily mean that you impact it, but yes, you're combining the two. The etzem comes begili. Yeah. Hold on. V'zeu al tikra ma elameya. This means don't say ma elameya. The meya b'chinas keser kaneda, because meya 100 is also keser. Rotzen. V'al tikra ma elameya hu sha'er makiv yer b'chinas primis. Kamashakosur makamacher. So that means al tikra ma. Don't call it ma, but call it meya. Means that don't call keser ma, so to speak. Call it meya. Or don't call it ma, meaning that it's beyond. Call it meya, kesser, that you're bringing makiv kesser should radiate in the internal. Interestingly, if you look at the end of the last Maimer, similar theme. At the end of the Maimerim, very often, we talked before about Nachmu. Also, if you remember, that both Nechamas, they're the two, they're makiv and pnimi, and they both come through the Nevi'im. Because there too, the kavanah is that pnimi should come into, makiv should come into pnimi. So you see here the theme of Ayin Beis being in microcosm in each of the discourses expressed. Like it says elsewhere. And all of this is through the preparation of awe in a form of subjugation and putting yourself aside. And this is Vat Yisrael. This is now Israel. He's summing it up. Because this, he says, what is God asking you already except to fear? Because this is possible for every one of Israel. Which comes from the transcendental faculties in the soul, Shabakulam B'Shava, that is equal in everybody. And don't say Ma'ala Meya. You know, it's Ma Shema. What is God asking? Don't say what He is asking. Make it Meya. The Chayav Adam Levarach Meya Brachas. Every person is responsible to say blessed 100 blessings a day. Because Bracha, it brings it into Primis. Baruch Hatar. So that in order that the Gili Haratzim, this higher Makif shouldn't remain concealed, it should come down and radiate in the pnimis. That's the ultimate goal. So this combines the two forces. Kitzur. And all this is because the essence of the desire transmits without levels. That's what means ha'ara. That's what means atzmis. Not ha'ara as ha'ara, but it's a reflection, but it's a reflection that's essential one, which means it doesn't go through gradations. And because of that, it's not united and fused and integrated with the faculties, that it should be nitfus behem, that should be graspable by them, within them, that they should cause the desire to have more or less. That's the summary. And when you say that through the revelation of the faculties, he becomes content, that comes from the pleasure. It's not directly from the faculties. It's like you said, it's not. But the Rotz, on the other hand, the desire does grasp them and lifel aleim, to impact on them. And that's why it's all of them equally. And the same thing is Lamaila. This is all an example of the infinite divine light, the transcendent light, is not in a form of distinction and levels. That's why in Torah there's distinction. And distinction has been the responsibility to study Torah. The desire in mitzvahs is no distinctions. Everybody's equal, equally, everyone's equally responsible for it. And the hamshacha is through actions. And the primary revelation comes through the preparation of love that comes with all your might. And with this he explained the verse in Parsha Eikev Ati Yisrael. What is God asking of you, Israel, ready to have all? Okay, so we finished Discourse 13, chapter 52, pages 91 through 93. Which concludes really the subject of faculties and desire, Makif and Pnimi, and then he's going to start discussing in the next Maimer 14, Sheftim, the whole union of Eir Ein Sof. So buckle your seatbelts.